Humanex Ventures presents Inside the Coaching Mind. Terry Pettit coached the University of Nebraska's first national championship team in 1995 and put the state of Nebraska on a path to volleyball greatness. Now, Terry mentors coaches, writes books, and gives talks about leadership and team building to corporate and business audiences. Here's Coach Pettit to take us inside the coaching mind.
Thank you, David Young. And before we get to our guest, Lee Feinswog, I want to thank Brad Black and Humanex Ventures, an organization that recruits, develops, and mentors extraordinary leadership and talent. Lee Feinswog, welcome to Inside the Coaching Mind. For those of you that don't know, and I can't imagine anyone listening to this who doesn't know what Lee does, Lee is the owner and editor of 900 Square Feet. If you can only subscribe, and it's free, to one volleyball media outlet, you need to Google 900 Square Feet, because everything you could possibly know, from a high school team in Massachusetts to international play, beach play, every score is there, comments and feature stories on every type of venue that volleyball takes place in. Lee, welcome to Inside the Coaching Mind.
Thanks, Terry. Since the scan is up there, anybody watching can subscribe to 900 Square Feet by hitting that scan and getting the link, or go to 900squarefeet.com. And while you were talking and the music was playing, I was reading up on Humanex Adventures because I was curious about them. Seems like a great organization. And I'm glad they sponsor you so that we have this podcast, because the more people and experts like yourself talking about our sport, the better. Even though you veer off into some pretty weird stuff sometimes. Like you have golf guys on, you know.
Well, Humanex Ventures was responsible for hiring PJ Fleck at Minnesota when all the Vita sheets suggested they hire somebody else. And yesterday I pulled up a YouTube video with Fleck saying the three most important things in football. And some of them we would recognize, like turnovers or broken plays. But the reason Minnesota, one of the reasons Minnesota pretty much destroyed Nebraska in a football game was poor tackling. And Minnesota had 9 sacks. I believe Minnesota had 0 sacks the week before. But sometimes it's very simple things that a coach emphasizes and just works on every day. We're going to do this exceptionally well, can make a difference in a contest like that. We want to talk about the top 20. I want to ask you what teams legitimately have a shot to possibly compete for a national championship, and talk a little bit about the world outside volleyball, because volleyball is impacted by political decisions that are made in the federal government, the state governments. And Lee, you're one of the few people that I think I know in the volleyball world that makes an effort to stay up to date on those things. So that's all wonderful. I know this, but some of our readers may not. Talk a little bit about your transition from being the owner and editor of Volleyball Magazine. Volleyball Magazine for years was the most important volleyball publication in the United States. It was a traditional magazine. I believe the Huskers were on the cover maybe when it was printed like a newspaper, before it even became a magazine, Monsters of the Midway. And you became the owner of that. I think I listened to a podcast the other day where you may have, maybe it was Ed that bought the magazine for $10. And
Yeah. So he and I were both freelancers for the magazine when it was a print magazine, and we were both growing disenchanted with the fact that the magazine went from 9 issues to 6 a year. The price stayed the same. The magazine was getting smaller. They didn't have a website where we could do more. And we both enjoyed covering the sport. And Ed was so dedicated primarily to beach volleyball, but went to indoors as well. And the short version of that is in 2016 in the spring, he called me, and I remember looking at the phone and going, Ed Chan, he doesn't talk. He was real shy and quiet. And I said, he'd never call me. And Ed, what's going on? He goes, we can buy Volleyball Magazine. You want to buy it? And I said, sure. And we did. I didn't find out until literally a couple of years later that he had only paid $10 for it. It's like, all right, you handle that. He goes, all right, we'll work that out on the back end. And he handled the negotiations, bought the magazine. I took care of like the lawyers and the corporations. I lived in Louisiana at the time, so it was smarter to domicile there than in California. It was way cheaper. And we had an opportunity in, I think it was 2019. We got bought by an organization called P1440, which people know because of Kerry Walsh Jennings' association with it. And it was at that time we had to disclose a bunch of stuff. And I looked at him, I went, $10? You bastard. Like I thought all this time he put out a chunk of cash, and we were just waiting for whenever something would unfold and we'd square up, right? And it was pretty funny. And the next year we reacquired the magazine from P1440. So Ed and I were the sole owners again. And then in September of 21, Ed died. He died in his sleep in a hotel in Chicago, covering AVP Chicago. Is sad on so many fronts to lose a great friend, my business partner, and half the free labor force. So it was I muddled on my own, and then a few years ago had a couple new partners come in, and I'm still a 25% owner, and I stayed the editor. But last year I decided that it was time to move on and do something new and different. So on Christmas Day of 2024, I posted the All American teams, which I'm glad to tell you I won't do again this year. We're just going to have the Russ Rose National Coach of the Year Award and the Jordan Larson National Player of the Year Award. But God, Terry, I got to tell you, posting the All American team is the most stressful thing that I used to do because I was so scared to screw it up. I had a panel of experts. We all voted and we tabulate and try to use some common sense. And we want to make sure we have at least a libero and a setter on each team, and that kind of thing. But you just go over it and over it. You're so afraid you're going to screw it up. And then I posted it on Christmas Day, and then I moved on and had decided previous to that we would start 900 Square Feet, the only all volleyball email, and launched that, I think, the first week of January. And it's been
Well,
really fun and really, really cathartic and different. It's not long form. I don't get to write the stories that I think I'm good at and like to do, but I had that opportunity last winter when I covered Love for Love.
I think one of the things that I appreciated about your All American teams is you chose them after the tournament was over.
Yes.
And, sometimes the AVCA, they have their All American banquet in the middle of the tournament. And I understand why they do it. But
Right,
as
they
a
do it on
coach,
Friday, well, Terry, let me give you an example. Last year on Tuesday, I'm on my way to the championships in Louisville, and because press conferences are Wednesday, the semifinals are Thursday, so it's Tuesday morning. I land in Louisville and dragging my luggage on the conveyor belt, one of those walking runways, and as I'm going one way, coming the other way is someone you know pretty well, Christy Johnson Lynch from Iowa State. And I go, Christy, and she goes, hi. And where are you going? And she goes, oh, I was here for the All American voting. I'm going. She was already on her way home, so she was
right.
back in her house on Tuesday afternoon in Iowa. You know, and uh, so, but to your point, the National Player of the Year and the National Coach of the Year, I think you should wait until after the tournament's over because it matters. And the other thing that we did that I wish the ABCA would do, and I haven't brought this up with those guys, and maybe they'll consider it now that we're not, and I know what else is going to have an All-American team, is a fourth team. Because Terry, we have so many good players. You can't limiting it to three and then just having a gratuitous honorable mention. Their honorable mention list is not long enough either. I mean, because what happens is you have really good players in the Power Four conferences who don't even get an honorable mention where they
Right.
could. If you had a fourth or even a fifth team, unlike a lot of other sports. Number one, we only have 7 players, on the floor. The libero in and out. And in our sport, unlike so many others, so many freshmen come in ready. I mean, they're prepared from high school and club, and they come in and they not only make an impact, they star, and they're ready to go. So the talent pool keeps pushing up from the bottom, and there's so many players who need to be recognized in volleyball. And I would love to see the ABCA go to 5 teams. There's no reason why you couldn't. Just because nobody else does it in their sport, heck, we could and we should.
Well, men's basketball used to only have 5 All-Americans. Now, I don't
Right.
know if and so it was very rare for a team ever to have
Well,
two all.
take you back to the Pac-8. Remember when UCLA would get the basketball bid every year? USC might have been the second best team in the country and never could go because they
Yeah,
only took the conference winners.
yeah. And the same was true with the ACC. I lived in North Carolina at that time, and if you didn't win the postseason tournament, you might have the best talent in the country, and you didn't get to go the NCAA tournament. Well, yeah, yeah. I want to talk a little bit about the teams that we both feel have a chance to compete for a national championship. Now, that doesn't mean that other teams aren't great teams. It doesn't mean that other teams aren't having an unbelievably good year. But I would like to focus on that. So if we could kind of go through the top, I don't know, how many teams do you feel? Give me a number. How many teams?
Let me phrase it a different way. Okay, if it's all said and done, and the champion ends up being, I'm looking at the RPI right now. Okay, I'll use that as my list. If I told you that Texas, Nebraska, Pittsburgh, Arizona State won the national championship at the end, and then I would skip down because I don't think SMU, Louisville, Purdue could win. I think they can get close. Stanford can win. Creighton can win. And I think Wisconsin can win. Looking
Well,
at that list. Now, if I said it's all said and done, because, there's so many factors that go in, okay? Who you play, where you play them, when you play them, and how they did the match before, who gets hurt. Good example, and you know this from, being so close to Creighton. Couple of years, was it 3 years ago? Creighton was on its way. Creighton was legit, and that had an injury. And back-to-back years, if I recall, they had injuries in crucial situations, but it opened the door for Kansas to get to the Final Four. Kansas's
right.
team that year wasn't a Final Four team, but the circumstances opened up, and credit to them.
Well,
So things
credit to
happen,
them. They beat USC on the road.
right?
I mean,
But
that
credit to them. I'm not trying to diminish, but when things happen in a tournament, who you play next, can be, wacky things can happen that you have no control over in your favor or against you. There's injuries. But
yeah.
if I told you when the dust cleared a few days before Christmas in Kansas City that Texas was the ultimate champion, or Nebraska was the ultimate champion, or Pittsburgh was the ultimate champion, you you would be you wouldn't be surprised. You go, okay, that's cool. Now Arizona State, I said I haven't watched them enough. I just know how good they are. I've only watched them in bits and pieces. But if Arizona State wins the national championship, aren't you going to be surprised?
I would be surprised.
Okay, if
For
Kentucky's fabulous, but I don't know. This week you and I talked. We know that Kentucky and Texas play. That's the first great barometer for Texas, and maybe for Kentucky to show us, hey, we're good enough. I love Kentucky. I love what they've got. They got the dynamic, maybe the 2 best pins on one team in the country. They do so many great things. But I'm just going to be surprised if Kentucky wins a national championship. SMU, I watch them and I go, they're a fabulous team, but there's just something there that
let,
tells me they're not going to win the national championship.
Lee, let me bring some structure to this.
You're killing me, Terry. I can't do structure. Go ahead.
Well, I'm gonna start with the team that I believe has uh, the best opportunity to win the national championship. I believe that's Nebraska,
Okay.
and I
Oh, and
would even.
Terry, let me interrupt you just 1 second. I skipped right over Louisville. I forgot to say Louisville. Louisville's one of those teams where
We'll get
God,
Lee.
did they play good.
We'll get to Louisville,
Okay.
but here's what I want you to do. I
All right.
want you to tell me um, what you believe Nebraska's strength is or strengths are, and what you believe the greatest strength of the head coach is, Danny Busboom Kelly.
Okay, her greatest strength in the case of taking over Nebraska is not breaking anything that's already fixed. She took over. I mean, she inherited an unbelievable roster. I don't think in this particular year she doesn't get credit for any of those players, does she? I mean, they were the roster was pretty much intact in who was coming in, and her use of them has been fantastic. Uh, Anybody who knows Danny knows not only what a wonderful coach she is, but what a calming, good figure she is, and how much her players like her, and how much she relates, and she can get on the floor with them, and uh, you know, there's a reason why she's got that job and why she had the success she had at Louisville. She lets her assistants who are capable do the right coaching, you know, um, and then
I would
Nebraska.
I would take it a step beyond that.
All
I
right,
think Danny, uh, I think I think Danny has a brilliant tactical mind. I think she has that she's one of the top two or three offensive coaches in the country. You see Nebraska doing things with this group that didn't happen last year. You're seeing more movement on offense, more crossing patterns. You're seeing a faster tempo. You're seeing attack out of the back row. You're seeing a middle blocker serve an attack out of the back row. You're seeing people serve from different serving positions. I don't think that's by accident. And the second thing is that I think it takes unusual talent to be able to manage a roster with that many alphas, that many, I never wanted to have people on a team who didn't want to be on the court, but that team has 15 people that not only want to be on the court, could be on the court and do very well. And so she'll take the right side player that came in from Baylor, and she won't play for 2 or 3 matches, but come in and that kid will perform very well right away.
yeah. Well, Ali Check knew what she was getting into when she transferred there. But to your point about the way they
Well,
play and the style they
the
play, certainly Danny and her coaches have to get some of the credit for that. But don't forget too, these players have matured. All of a sudden now, Bergen Riley's a junior. Andy Jackson has been through the wars. Harper Murray has been through so much and is having her best season. All those things combined, there's a level of maturity and experience that you can't replace, and
that's a good
for
point.
everything they've been through.
That's a good point. But you also have two players who've competed for the libero spot, and one, you know how people can be. You want to play shortstop, and you're put over at second base, and even professional players can go into a funk. But she's handled that part really well, and I think she does it well because of transparency. I think she tells people what the expectations are, and it's out there. Um, but what's so the team is
Well,
talented.
I think that
It's
the other thing about Nebraska that I mean, it's obvious. You look at them; they're great. They're wonderful. They're strong and talented, but it's the most well-equipped roster to sustain injuries or setbacks.
yes,
And not everybody is in that position where you could, just think about who we talk about Bergen Riley. Think about who they have at backup, a setter who doesn't play. You mentioned the right sides. I mean,
right.
they've got, you bring in a 6'5" Italian pro, and then you've got Ali Check who comes in and just lights it up when she comes in. Um, you've got backup middles who don't play. You could flip flop them. You've got outside hitters who anybody would drool on just to have on their roster. So they're the most and you've got two star libero slash DSs that either, you're so well equipped for a setback and hopefully not an injury, but you and I both know injuries are, a big part of sports, especially in the last third of the season and the NCAA tournament. We've seen it every year.
The other thing that's happening there that I think has to happen when you have a team with that type of talent, when you have separation from the other teams in your conference, it's not enough to win. When Penn State won, was it 5 national championships in a row? They weren't just beating teams, they were demolishing teams. And Nebraska's gone, I believe, 22 sets, I think, without losing. They made
31.
no,
I think it's 31, Terry.
Yeah. Uh, I wanted to give Coach Cook a call and let him know that the 95 team went 66 sets in a row. Uh, but, but the point is, I like it when dominant teams are dominant against everybody. They don't take a night off. And for some reason, Danny's been able to get that out of these teams. You mentioned the third middle blocker, the freshman. She reminds me of Elena Oden. I think she'd start on any other team in the country, and maybe should be starting on this team, despite having two wonderful players ahead of her. But yes, their depth is there. Where could they be vulnerable?
They're a college volleyball team. You know, I used to. I was a club director for 20 years, volleyball Baton Rouge, and fathers always used to get so frustrated watching their adolescent daughters play, and they go, "They're so inconsistent. Why? Why?" And I go, "Okay, listen. When your daughter wakes up and comes to breakfast in the morning, do you get the same girl every morning?" And he goes, "No, of course not." And I go, "What makes you think it's going to be any different on a volleyball court?" Oh, yeah. You know, you every great team um, is susceptible to maybe that one server who goes off lights out. Maybe all of a sudden you're just a little bit discombobulated at the wrong time. Maybe Nebraska closes out, maybe doesn't lose a set all the way to the NCAA tournament, and then all of a sudden is in a situation where, we're down 2-1. We haven't even faced this kind of adversity. And you never know what goes into the minds of those kids and how everybody handles the situation. The upside for them, of course, they'll be at home, and then they play in Kansas City, which is going to just be covered in red. I know all you Husker fans already got your tickets. It doesn't make any difference. Even if Nebraska doesn't make it to Kansas City, I know you'll all be there. Say hello. But, you know, we could play on Mars and it would be the big red everywhere, and,
Well,
but so that's the only thing. And then, of course, like I said, there's injuries. If somebody gets hurt, okay, you got to make a sub, and maybe somebody plays who hasn't. And if it happens at a time, like if not everybody is as fortunate as Louisville last year, when the blood and guts of their team, went out and
and
incredible.
that and when that happened, it almost seemed like it impacted Pitt more than it did Louisville.
Yeah, because
Uh,
Paige Peterson came in and played out of her mind, but you can't guarantee that stuff like that's going to happen. You just never know. Um,
right.
but certainly on paper, you would certainly think that Nebraska is the team to beat and the favorite in every set it will
Okay.
play the rest of the year.
But let's go to your favorite. I sense that in your poll, you're probably voting Texas. That
I'm
Texas.
the one, but it wasn't. And the only reason I haven't, I think if Texas and Nebraska played right now, number one, it would be a great match. Where they play, what time, who they just came off of playing, I think, will affect it. I voted Texas number one, our first poll, and that was at the end of the pre-conference. Okay, so that would have been around September 25th or so, right? Our first poll, first media poll, give or take. And by a slight edge, I made Texas number one and Nebraska number two. Texas has not lost since then. Nebraska hasn't lost since then. Texas lost a few more sets and has been challenged. But there are people who would tell you this year the SEC is better than the Big Ten, top to bottom. I don't know if that's true or not. I'm just going to say. So if I vote Texas number one and Texas never loses, how do I not make them number one still?
Well, I'm not
That's
asking you. I'm not asking you why you voted. I'm
no,
asking
but
who you
and the other
who you think is the best team.
oh, I think they're a coin flip. I mean, look at Texas has a setter who set a national championship. They have a libero who won a national championship. They have an outside hitter in Torrey Stafford, the transfer, who's been to two Final Fours. And you've
Wonderful
got
play.
four freshmen who are just flat out lighting it up. And, Kari Spears is going to be the National Freshman of the Year, barring something unusual, the right side, who just keeps getting stronger and stronger. We're at that point of the year where you go, keep waiting for freshmen to break down. And if you're going to see the effects of the long season. And then this kid just keeps getting stronger and stronger and stronger. They're good. I don't know how well equipped they are to handle an injury. I don't know what happens there for them. I don't know what happens in the matchups. I think this week's Kentucky-Texas game will tell us a lot. Then Texas plays Texas A&M, and Texas A&M's got Logan Lednicki, who's one of the great stars of the college game. And I don't know if the Texas outside hitters can control her.
Well, what's Jared Elliott's talent? What is his greatest strength? The Texas head coach.
Oh, calmness and managing. Um, he is as good a coach as all the rest of the head coaches, but he has hired the best staffs continuously since he's been there. And he recognizes that his program is so big that he's, in essence, a general manager. But I mean, look, his last coach that he lost was Eric Sullivan, who's only now our Olympic coach. And he brought in the Canadian guy from Kentucky. His name is escaping me right now, but regarded by many people as one of the most brilliant minds in all of college volleyball. So that's who he replaced him with. He's got David Hunt, who's been not only in the national gym, but the head coach at Pepperdine for the men, and he's a great, great coach. And the rest of his staff, and not just the people who coach, but the Dobos, the trainers, they've been with him a while, and it's just a great staff that he manages. And he interjects himself when he has to, but when he doesn't have to, he lets his people do his job. Just like
Well,
back to like you talked about Danny and what a great coach he was. One of the greatest things she did at Louisville was let Dan Meskey coach when Dan Meskey needed to run things and do things, and that's smart. And I'm sure she's doing the same thing at Nebraska now.
okay, I'm gonna challenge you on a couple things here.
Okay.
I agree that Jarrett must be I've heard him say, I want to be the CEO, I want to be the general manager. He's
Three national championships and lost in about 6 or 7 Final Fours other than that.
sure. And he was the first to transition to what we're doing now. In other words, he didn't hesitate. He got people out of the portal quick and
Mm-hmm.
won a national championship with.
Well,
I'm not sure. I'm not, Lee. How many teams can continue to do programs? If your goal is to win a national championship, how many schools can continue to recruit freshmen and develop them? And Nebraska has the right side players, but the rest of them are players they've recruited and developed. I'm not sure many schools can do that if we stay with the same model where you can leave at any time and
I've
you can
had
go out.
coaches tell me, right, Terry. I've had coaches tell me I don't even worry about who I recruit anymore. I'm just waiting for the transfers.
Right.
And that's so unfortunate. But
It's
um,
it's unfortunate, but it certainly has benefited Texas, SMU. I would say Penn State. Penn State's left sides last year.
no
Most
one has won the national championship in the recent past without key transfers. I could go back to every team. I mean, Texas, obviously, the transfers they had when they won those back-to-back national championships, crazy. The last time Nebraska won, I think, was the year that Brianna Holman became eligible and played. She was a transfer. Pittsburgh's been to the Final Four. Dan Fisher's cornered the market on transfers. I don't. Kentucky. Kentucky was the last team to win a national championship. They won the COVID year without a transfer, and then the two Skinners left. The one left. Avery left the next year for Baylor, and 2 years later, Maddie left, and then she played on the Texas championship teams. Stanford won 3 championships in 4 years, and when they won in 2019, they had a key middle who came from UCLA. But if you recall, she applied for grad school at Stanford, got in, and then went and approached the Stanford coaches and said, "Hey, I'm in. Can I come play volleyball for you?" But they don't win the national championship without her. I'm blanking on her name, but I'm sure you remember who I mean. But
Yeah, no, I do, and
yeah,
I
yeah.
think if you got Plummer on the court, you can probably win the national championship whether that girl shows
Well,
up.
that was KP was a good start, and then of course Wisconsin.
Right.
Their success the last 5 or 6, 7 years has all been not all been, but has happened at the key moments because of great transfers. Not the least of which was Sarah Franklin.
Okay.
Penn State last year, Juravicius. right?
Yes.
Uh,
Yes.
not
Who
totally.
now finds herself having to change.
The outside hitter, Jess
Jess
Merzing.
Merzig.
She started somewhere else. You
Well, she
know.
was at was it Michigan State or
Yeah,
Michigan?
yeah.
Uh,
So
I,
it's I'll give you a reference for you there, Terry, from your youth. Beach blanket bingo. Only
okay.
it's
Yeah. Well, let me back up here and take you at your word. Now, one of your strengths you said was Jared Elliott's calmness. This is also a head coach who basically climbed up on the officials stand in a Final Four and tore apart the R2, and so I
a couple of things.
it,
He was number one. He was right. It was an overlap, and
okay,
but that's not the point. He acted like a fool, and he got a yellow card. But his team still went on and won that set and won the
right.
national championship. But yes, but think of all the times you've ever watched him coach. Have you ever seen him get upset other than that one time?
Well,
God,
no, 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 I don't. You're right, Lee. But here's the problem I have if you are take the approach as a general manager. As a general manager, can you walk into the huddle when you aren't doing that in practice?
I've been to their practices. He coaches in practice.
Okay, good.
Yeah,
All right, let's move on to Pittsburgh.
yeah.
Dan Fisher, what does he do extremely well? What does Pitt do extremely well? We know Olivia Babcock is still she'll be under consideration to win that Jordan Larson Lee Feinswog award. Does a Camaro or a Corvette come with that?
The Jordan Larson 900 square feet National College Player of the Year award. Um, Olivia Babcock is so good. I've made the references. She's kind of like our version of Otani because she has, we say five-tool baseball player. I mean, gosh, what she does in every possible way. I mean, she hits out of the front row, she hits out of the back row. She served maybe better than anybody in the college game. She blocks like crazy, and then she plays defense, floor defense, as good as any right side. I mean, she's just so good. But back to Dan Fisher. A couple of things about Dan. Number one, he's obviously extremely competitive. You can just sense it when you're around him and you're around his teams. I've been to their practice as well. He's a good teacher, really hands-on, really active on the court, very involved teacher. And the other thing is, I think he can push buttons really well. I just get this feeling from watching him that he may have a little bit of Russ Rose in him. And I've never heard this, but I just can. I've been close enough where I get the feeling like maybe he's hitting the right sarcastic button or getting on a kid the right way. He seems to have that ability. That their late season success the last 5 years is just incredible. Plus, he's had good transfers come in that he's capitalized on. He always is in the discussion as being a national team coach. I know he's done a lot of international coaching, not at the Olympic level, but 21 teams, 19 teams, those kind of things. And I
But
think he's a good coach.
what does Pitt always do extraordinarily well?
Compete,
Tell me what tell me what
compete,
their brand is.
yeah, compete fiercely. That's the two things that came out of the ACC the last 5 years is them and Louisville. The level to which they compete and play defense and just won't give up. There, no lead is safe when you're playing against them. And we throw out all the corny cliches, but grit and just everything. You watch them and you go, God, these guys are like cockroaches. You can't kill them. You know,
Well, and I think the ACC at the top end probably has more competitive teams than any other conference. That's a tremendous advantage
certainly
to
those
know.
three teams this year.
And
Again,
yeah,
and if you haven't seen, and if, four teams: Pittsburgh, SMU, Louisville, Stanford, and if Miami. When Miami's good, Miami's one of those teams that I don't know where they're going to get seeded. I don't think they should. They deserve a top 16, but I don't even know if they could host in that little bandbox gym they play in. But Miami's good. I mean, Miami's got a superstar. Flor Marie Heredia Colon played at Nebraska. and she was the L1, she would be the national player of the year because everybody would go, "Oh my gosh," because she's a full grown tight end playing outside hitter, and she's Dominican Republic professional who's fantastic. But but to your point, and then North Carolina's ranked but low in the RPI, so they are top heavy.
Yeah, yeah. And if Nebraska has a challenge in their schedule, that's it. They are not going to play a team at Pitt's level or Texas level or SMU's level. That doesn't mean that they couldn't lose at Wisconsin at Friday night, but when the match begins, player for player, they're not looking across the net at equal talent. Those
Mhm.
top four teams in the ACC, that's happening to them. Stanford, Kevin Hamley's team. To me, Stanford has more depth than I've ever seen them have. I mean, there are players who started there 2 years ago that some nights don't start. They were, I don't know whether they're have as much grit as some Stanford teams have had in the past. They have a wonderfully athletic setter, freshman setter, who's going to be a tremendous player. Kevin has certainly been there before.
I saw Stanford the first weekend. They got their ass kicked, and I think it was to Texas. And I watched Stanford that weekend. I think it was in Lincoln, and
I think it might have been Nebraska, but
yeah, just a total blur for me that trip after I flew from Singapore to Seoul to Minneapolis to Omaha, got up the next morning and went to Lincoln, and
well, if
I,
you'd pay full price, Lee, you could possibly fly
yeah, because there's a
direct.
lot. There's a lot of Singapore to Lincoln direct nonstop. So I'll have to look into that next time. Um, I watched Stanford that day, and I said, "This team can win the national championship." And I have people I said that to. I can back it up. So talented and so young, with good coaches who are going to make them better, and they've gotten better and better and better. They've got a glue in Elia Rubin, who's probably the most underrated outside hitter in the country. Just flat out gets the job done. Um, she's
Lee,
she's.
who's she underrated by?
I think if you ask people, tell me the top 10 players in the country, they might not mention her.
Yeah,
Um,
well, that's because there's almost no coverage of West Coast volleyball.
well, and
Ever,
she's
ever
she's
since,
so good, but they're tall, athletic. The setter and libero just keep getting better and better. And you know that Kevin Hambley and his staff can coach them up like nobody's business. And I just thought this is a team that come December can win 6 matches in the NCAA tournament. They're good. They're really good. And nothing that Stanford does one way or the other, would surprise me. But Stanford
well,
is
what do Hamley's teams always do well? What's Stanford's brand?
I think that he adjusts to the different kinds of players that he has. He doesn't have, there's not a system. You don't do it a certain way. He adjusts to the different players. And he understands that the kind of kid who comes to Stanford sometimes is so cerebral, cares a lot, but understands a lot of things about a lot of other things in volleyball and integrates them all together and doesn't lock himself in. He goes with the flow, so to speak. And if you watch his huddles, you can see what a nice handle on things he has. They don't ever look stressed, even when they should be under stress. And I give him some of the credit for that. They've got some real challenging matches coming up. Not this week, but in 2 weeks they play North Carolina. They play North Carolina, Duke, Pittsburgh, and SMU in a row. And with those 4 matches in a row, that'll be a good litmus test for them. And then they finish up at Louisville, last regular season game. You never know, that could be a critical game for seeding at that point.
Yeah. SMU, Sam Erger. I mean, SMU has come out of the
She,
some dark hole in the galaxy to
but
become a.
you ever been there?
If I did, I didn't know it.
It's one of the most beautiful schools in the most prestigious, beautiful neighborhoods in all of Texas. It's just a wonderful place. They don't have great facilities like a big arena where they that's a big drawing point. But you're within 100 miles of the most fertile recruiting base in all of the country. And for years, they just languished, and I never understood why SMU wasn't better. Well, Sam, just like
Lee, they weren't better because they got put on. They got the death penalty in football, and that pretty much impacted all their sports.
yeah, well, nowadays, Eric Dickerson would just be the richest college football player instead of somebody who's illegal. But yeah, you're throwing out old references that some people out there definitely won't get, Terry. But um, Sam Erger and Jason Williams were both assistants to Ryan McGuire at Baylor, and they both got their respective jobs. Jason's at TCU, and what a great job he's done there. But Sam Erger comes from a coaching family. Her dad is one of the all-time winningest high school coaches, I think, in the state of Michigan. Her sister's a high school or college coach. Her sister coaches. It's a sports family. And, it's funny. I asked Sam, I said, Sam, you're so nice, and you're so good to talk to. What happens to you when you coach? Because she turns into a lunatic sometimes. She's raving and rolling those sidelines but fiercely competitive. Obviously, a very good coach. She has a good staff too, and she's mastered this art of getting transfers in. I mean, look at what those transfers did last year and what they've done this year. They're having career years for her.
But the difference is this: she must have a wonderful eye for talent because she's not getting the name player, say that's going to
No,
Texas or
I
Pitt.
mean, Malaya Jones. If I told you she's going to be, a superstar this year, come on, you know.
Well, I've watched Malaya for 3 years at Colorado State. I could have told you she was going to be
Okay.
a super. But you're right.
No, I mean,
Because
I
she
know how
played.
good she was there, but she's better. Just like those kids she had last year, the two pins who came in, they were better. And Jaden Livings, that's not a bad pickup either. You know, one of the many players whose dads played football at LSU, by the way, Nate Livings, Kari Spears, the freshman right side we talked about from Texas. Her dad, Marcus Spears, is from Baton Rouge and played on LSU's national championship team in 2003. And his wife, the former Aisha Smith, played basketball at LSU and played in the WNBA. And she has a little brother who's going to be a first round draft pick. He's that good. This kid's a basketball player. He's just a stud. But what the people she has gotten in there and what she's done with them, wow.
Well, SMU and Pitt play at North Carolina this week. Now, I would think for us to take North Carolina seriously, by seriously, I mean a top 10 program, don't they need to be really competitive in at least one of those matches?
I watched Louisville at North Carolina. I think it was Sunday, and it was a great match. Louisville 1-4, battled hard, but man, it was a good match. Carolina's really, really tough. Plays well at home. Got a really nice outside hitter in Safi Hampton, and a lot of other good pieces. And plays a really, really good brand of volleyball. They're really good. They're a possible round of 16 team.
Yeah. Here's the biggest change that I think I've seen from volleyball, beyond serving, from volleyball today and volleyball, say 20 years ago. I watched Northern Colorado play Colorado last night,
Mm.
and Colorado's a ranked team. In the 1990s, if you got a team out of system, there was a pretty good chance you were going to be in system coming back. That you were not, the ball was going to be hit that hard, and you were going to be able to dig the ball in system and run your middle or right side coming back. Nowadays, you still want to get teams out of system, but every team has somebody that can put down the ball out of system.
And
And
and from all and from different places.
right, right, yeah.
Yeah.
I,
Well,
I
Terry,
don't,
when you coach, for example, did you run back row attacks the way kids do now? To the degree that we do? Like, and you see,
no, no. The only person we ran it to was Allison Weston, who, this is how different things were then, who's a a national player of the year as a middle blocker. But middles played all six rotations. And so sometimes when we were in trouble, we would give her the ball, but we didn't do it in the way that teams do it today. I don't see how you can beat the best way to attack a team running a 6-2. Colorado ran a 6-2 last night. If Northern Colorado had had a back row attacker, they'd have won the match, but they didn't. And so they couldn't attack the back row setter. It still went 5. It still was a very close match. But for most of the night, Northern Colorado outplayed Colorado. The difference came down to athletes on the pin in the fifth set.
well, Northern Colorado is just been an icon for what college sports should be. What Lindsey Benson Oates has done there, uh, former LSU player, returned to her hometown, of course, and it's done just such a great job there. And year in and year out, the team to beat in the Big Sky, and makes the most out of what they have and plays everybody tough. And last night's a good example of that. I'm really happy for Colorado because the last few years it just seemed like every time Jesse Mahoney's teams would take one step forward, they take two backwards or three backwards, and it was just constantly like that. And it's good to see them have some success. I think it's good for the sport.
No, they have a very good middle, huge side, two very good middles, one very good left side player. I would say the challenge for Colorado, they do a lot of commit blocking, and I don't think you can do that against the best teams because of back row attack. You release that middle blocker out, they're going to have a right side player or somebody attacking on the pipe that's going to make you pay for it. The team that I haven't watched that you have seen is Arizona State. Make a case for Arizona State as a team that could be in the Final Four.
Mm, I have to come clean. The longest stretch I watched them play was when they went to Texas State early and almost lost that match. And Nomi Glover wasn't playing then. She's back. She's obviously one of the really, really good players in the country. Um, uh, I'm intrigued when I see them, and I don't know. Is this fair to say they don't pass the eyeball test, but somehow, some way, you look at them and they win? Is that you know
I tend to say, Lee, trust what you see. So I would trust, I have not seen them. So if you say they don't pay the
JJ?
eye,
Yeah, they JJ Van Neal is a great story. He was an assistant coach for a long time at Utah. Then he was at USC right before he got the head coaching job at Arizona State. He was a businessman in finance, I'm pretty sure. And I don't know if you noticed, but he's like the last guy now coaching in a suit and tie. Although my guy Brandon Rosenthal at Lipscomb sometimes will sport out the suit and tie. But JJ's a really really good coach who's learned from really really good people. I mean, Beth Lanier, the coach that he was with at Utah. I mean, is there a better person, a better coach, learn how to run a program than his time at USC? But he's got a really good staff there, and he gets it, and they play tough defense. I just have to watch them more, and part of it's
well,
because I go to bed so early here on the East Coast, and they're playing West Coast time.
you mentioned Wisconsin earlier. Their setter's out for the year. So
Is she definitely out for the year?
yes,
I
yes,
mean,
definitely.
are you saying, you know that? Are you saying that because they haven't said? I don't know the nature. I just know she has a shoulder injury.
I think I saw it in the Wisconsin State Journal that
Okay,
she was out here. Now, uh, and I kind of sense that might be the case. Maybe I don't know if she played enough matches. Maybe she could redshirt, but I did hear Kelly say at one point that she was going to have shoulder surgery, whether it was during the season or after the season. So if she's not on the court, then they're a good team, but they're not a team that can compete for national championship. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, without her, they can't win the national championship. The other
Yeah,
setter's doing a really nice job, but they're not gonna win
right.
without her. And
And
that's
we'll
too bad because that team was poised to do really, really well. You've got, Mimi Collier, the outside hitter, has to be in the discussion for National Player of the Year, for example. And they're really good, and they still can disrupt things in the Big Ten and the NCAA tournament. But I do think it's going to be really hard for them to win a national championship like you're talking about.
have we ever had this many great left side players? Harper Murray, Mimi Collier, Eva Hudson, Brooklyn DeLay, the player at Texas that came from Pitt. Boy, those are the Stanford's left side. I
I
can't
think
recall.
I'll go different. Have you ever seen so many great right sides in college volleyball?
Well, I coached at Nebraska, Lee, so I saw a lot of them.
So you had one, whatever. But no, I mean, right now, I'm going to start listing them. I'm going to be, going to miss. But Olivia Babcock, Logan Lednicki, Carrie Spears, just off the top of my head. Um,
That's three. That's three. And
the kid, the
Babcock to
kid,
me,
the kid for
there's
Louisville, Brashears. Um, they are. I mean, Terry. There are so many unbelievably good right sides in the country. I'm going to try while we're talking to. I think I can categorize this, find them, and categorize them. Let me
well,
see.
but Babcock is clearly the best. I mean, to
Oh,
me, she has that separation.
you were just talking before about Kennedy Martin.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
we were talking before about back row attack. Babcock. Oh my gosh. I'd be scared if I were on the other side of the net getting ready to dig one of her pipes. My gosh.
Well, rarely does somebody go from college right into being a star internationally. But the other thing I like about Babcock, she seems to me to be a genuinely team-oriented person, just a good person. And
Absolutely. Oh, but Nomi Glover, um, Malaya Jones, who we talked about. I mean, gosh, there's the right sides right now. Terry. Oh my gosh.
yeah, is there a right side out there that's a six rotation player who passes?
Babcock.
And how many rotations?
I don't think they hide her at all, do they?
Yeah, she's usually put in position to attack. Her job is to attack, Lee.
Yeah. Well, hit home runs. We'll worry about the rest of it later. Um,
All right. Hey, I want to transition to something here that
okay.
is on on my Facebook website. In an average month, there's 3.5 million downloads. Of those 3.5 million, 3,499,000 only want me to talk about Nebraska volleyball. Uh, but I have a much larger vision of the world. Something happened yesterday that has an indirect impact, or will have an indirect impact, I believe, on women's sport. Tiger Woods came out and he accosted Jeff Bezos, the head of Amazon, and said, I'm separating from Amazon. I'm not going to have endorsements on there. I'm not going to have product because you're supporting Trump, and Trump supports hate. Tiger Woods is very apolitical. He's never, I mean, he's played golf with the president. He's done all kinds of things. Then yesterday also we saw the Senate pass uh, a bill to remove tariffs on Brazil. That indicates to me that the support for the current administration may be waning. So how does that impact sport? Well, I was a person who wondered whether or not the current administration would begin to impact Title IX, that could impact how opportunities for women, how funds were, how revenue sharing was distributed. But it seems to me like things are shifting now. And, obviously we're in a lot of turmoil. You mentioned Malaya Jones and Colorado State. Will Colorado State have a women's Division I women's volleyball program 10 years from now? Will Northern Colorado have a program? If these schools find out they can't afford to pay players a couple $100,000, are they going to want to fund these programs? I don't know the answer to that. But to stick our heads in the sand and say that sport is separate than everything else, it's not separate. You and I might wish it was, but it's not. So what's your
Well,
response to my?
let's. So Terry and I are Facebook friends, and I just I'll send him cryptic notes, but I usually don't post anything like that or reply to stuff like that on Facebook. I do occasionally, but I'll send him a text and I'll say, Terry, why are you pissing all these people off on Facebook by like having thoughts, you know? And so, you know, um, the things that you talked about, notwithstanding, the pressure, financial and otherwise, on Olympic sports is going to get much greater as we move on. You know, the NCAA has changed so much. Now, life would have been really simple if Title IX from the get go had discarded football. So if you didn't have football as part of it, right? Then
Right.
everything would be, you could go tit for tat, and we would, like, for example, um, no Power Four AD is going to add men's volleyball because of Title IX. You know, they're just it's just not going to happen. So you got men's volleyball getting added at places you never heard of, like the Uville, which is a college in New York. Who knew? So you ha- that's not going to change. And then in the new landscape with NIL and revenue sharing, and I think legislation that's going to come. So you remember there's a rule now that to be Division I, you have to have X number of sports, in addition to football, basketball, and baseball. You know, at what point are they going to go, you guys can have whatever you want? Well, the Power Four is going to be fine. Okay. Nobody in the Power Four is going to drop volleyball. But to your point, what happens at a place like Colorado State? What happens at a private school like um, a small school in North Carolina where they go, why do we have women's golf? Why do we have volleyball? That's what concerns me. And Terry, we don't have enough time to.
No, Lee, and
But I have my own solution, which real quick, just not to get too far off the path from the question you asked me, was we have a thing called the MPSF out west, the Mountain Pacific Sports Federation, which fields conference sports for schools that don't have a place otherwise. So they have men's volleyball, for example, that includes three Pac-12, former Pac-12 schools, Stanford, USC, and UCLA. They have men's water polo, women's water polo, a couple other sports, beach volleyball now. So there's a place for them. I think we need MPSF type leagues all around the country so that the schools have places to put them, not in the conferences that they're in now. There's going to be times when there's going to be the Ohio Valley or the Big South or the Southlands just going to throw its hands up and go, we're not doing this anymore, and that really worries me. So back to your point, the original question, the Trump administration made a full-out assault from the get-go on private schools, specifically like Ivy League schools like Harvard and other, and all of them to some degree seem to have withstood the initial storm. I'm not sure that that's over with. The influence that the Trump administration appeared to have had on the NCAA settlement, which is still not settled and still in turmoil. I could, tell you the same thing about the peace talks and the settlement in the Middle East. And yesterday there was another bombing. So everything's in transition, and the influence that is coming from the outside on college sports can't be um, overstated. But you're way above my pay grade on trying to analyze where we're going with all of those things related to the current political climate. I hope for you and I, Terry, I think we might be safe getting through this. But for the next generation of coaches and fans, for you young people out there, like those in your 60s or something, it's going to be a continually changing world. You've got athletes making more than their coaches. You've got some of that maybe in volleyball right now. We're pretty damn close. And
Yeah, I would think so. Yeah.
if you've ever been to an NBA practice, you know that that's not good. They don't listen. They don't want to be coached. They just play the game. And to back to something you said way earlier in this conversation was how Danny Busboom Kelly has done a great job of keeping an entire roster happy, at least on the outside looking in, and staying all for one and one for all. Those are all good. But it's some tough navigation there, especially when they all find out what the others are getting paid and what they're making.
Yeah. Lee, you're wonderful. The newsletter's
Ooh,
900.
wait, the scan code is back. Scan that. Sign up for 900 Square Feet, the all volleyball email. It's free. Or go to 900squarefeet.com.
Yeah. Lee, thank you so much. I also want to thank Brad Black and Humanex Ventures. And I sure appreciate the dialogue, and continue doing what you're doing. I read it every day, and there's always good things in it. And to our audience, we'll see you next time. Thanks for tuning in.
And Terry, thank you for
Inside the Coaching Mind is presented by Humanex Ventures and is pleased to be a part of the Learfield Varsity Podcast Network. If you're on Facebook, look for the Inside the Coaching Mind group and join a vibrant discussion of volleyball and leadership. TerryPettit.com is where you'll find Terry's books, writings, and downloads, as well as subscription links for all your podcast apps.